Hey everyone, you ready for a deep dive that'll really make you think? Today we're tackling evolutionary culturology. EvCult for short. Get ready, this one is a doozy.
It's a pretty wild ride.
So, what is it? Give us the download.
Well, it's more than just a theory. Think of it like a framework. A framework that tries to unify, all knowledge. I'm talking how atoms behave to why societies rise and fall.
Whoa, okay, that's ambitious to say the least.
Right. So we're talking about taking science, philosophy, history, pretty much everything,
Yeah.
and putting it all under one umbrella.
So how does it even begin to do that? How do you even approach something that big?
By looking at the building blocks of everything. And EvCult calls those building blocks fractal Holland-Partons.
Okay, fractal Holland-Partons. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It's a pretty wild name, but actually the idea is fairly simple. Once you wrap your head around it, think of an ant colony. So you've got the individual ants, right? Each one doing their own thing. But then you also have the colony as a whole, acting as one unit.
Right, so the ants are parts, and the colony is the whole. But what makes them fractal Holland-Partons?
Because each ant in itself is a whole, it's a complex system.
Okay.
And the colony at the same time is also part of a larger ecosystem.
Right.
So they're both parts and wholes, depending on how you look at them.
Okay, it's all about perspective then. So it's about levels, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like those Russian Negev dolls. Each one is complete on its own, but also part of the bigger picture.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, EvCult says this pattern, this part and whole thing applies to everything.
Whoa, hold on. Everything.
Everything. Atoms, cells, organisms, societies, galaxies, even ideas.
So we're all just nested systems within systems then.
You got it.
It's like, that line from the movie, we're all just space dust. But with a lot more structure, obviously.
Exactly a great way to put it. And just like space dust, coalesces to form stars and planets. EvCult says these Holland-Partons, they follow these certain laws, right? As
Yeah.
they interact and build upon each other.
Okay, laws. So there's a rule book to the universe. Tell me more. I'm ready.
Right. Well, the first law is called upward integration,
Upward integration.
meaning that smaller units always combine to make larger, more complex systems.
Okay, makes sense. Kind of like how those ants we were talking about build a colony, right? But it can't just be all about building UP, right? Things fall apart too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, things definitely fall apart. The second law is called lateral cooperation and competition. So units at the same level, let's say 2 ant colonies, they can work together, right?
Yeah.
But they also compete for resources. So there's always this tension.
Right, so it's this dance of cooperation and competition that drives change.
Exactly. Push and pull.
Got it.
And the third law is downward command and control. So units, they have power over smaller units within their own system.
Okay, makes sense.
Think of the queen ant and all those worker ants, right?
Right.
So she's got the control.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these 3 laws could play out in a lot of ways. But where does it get really interesting? Where does EvCult really shine?
Well, our source material for this deep dive is a paper called 30 Past Paradoxes and EC's Solutions, and it shows how EvCult can be used to solve, some of the biggest brain twisters out there.
Ooh, paradoxes. I love a good paradox. They're like little puzzles that make you question everything you thought you knew. Where do we even begin?
Let's start with one that combines quantum physics with some cute, furry animals.
All right, I like where this is going.
Schrodinger's cat, anyone.
Ooh, yes, a classic. Always a head-scratcher. But remind me, what's the paradox exactly?
So imagine you've got a cat
Okay.
stuck in a box.
Or kitty.
Right. And inside this box, there's this device that has a 50-50 chance of releasing, poison.
Okay, now I'm worried about the cat.
I know, it's a thought experiment, don't worry. But here's the thing. Until we open the box, right, we don't know if the cat is alive or dead.
Right.
Quantum mechanics says the cat is both alive and dead at the same time in a state called superposition.
Okay, wait, stop right there. Superposition. That's where I usually check out. How can something be in 2 states at once?
I know, it's one of those things that defies our everyday logic, but it's like a cornerstone of quantum mechanics.
Okay.
And here's where EvCult steps in. With a kind of fresh perspective. Remember those fractal Holland-Partons we were talking about?
Yeah.
And those levels?
Right. Like the ant and the colony, both parts and wholes.
Exactly. So EvCult says the cat's 2 possible states, right, alive or dead, are actually 2 separate Holland-Partons.
Okay.
Existing on different levels.
So they both exist.
They both exist until we open the box, that is, and we integrate the situation into our own reality.
Wait, so observing the cat forces those two possibilities to collapse into one. That's like saying observation shapes reality.
Exactly. And EvCult gives us a way to, understand how that works. It's not magic. It's about how information flows between systems.
Okay, that is mind-blowing. But also, it kind of makes sense. So what other, paradoxical mystery can EvCult shed light on?
Let's go from the subatomic world to the vastness of space. Are you ready to tackle the Fermi paradox?
The where are all the aliens paradox. Bring it on.
Welcome back to our deep dive. Hope you're ready for more.
My brain is still recovering from Schrodinger's cat, but yeah, hit me. What's the next paradox on our list?
Let's talk about the ship of Theseus. It's all about identity, what makes something itself, even as it changes over time.
Ooh, yeah, I've heard of this one. It's that thought experiment, right? Where a ship gets repaired over time, piece by piece.
Right.
And eventually, every single part is replaced.
Right.
And the question is it still the same ship?
Exactly. It really makes you think about what defines identity. Is it the physical stuff or something more?
If every piece is different, I'd probably say it's a new ship.
Right.
But I have a feeling EvCult has maybe a slightly more nuanced take on this.
You bet. EvCult would look at this through the lens of those fractal Hohenpartens and their laws. Remember that first law, upward integration?
Right, where smaller units kind of combine to create bigger systems.
Right. So even though the ship's physical parts have changed, it's still part of the same larger system.
Okay.
It's still functioning as a ship. It has a history. It occupies a specific place in the world.
So it's less about the physical pieces and more about the ship's role in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It's like a human body. Our cells they're constantly being replaced.
Right.
But we still consider ourselves the same person over time because we maintain a continuous identity in the larger system of our lives.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
It's not just about what something is made of, but
Yeah.
also its connections,
Yeah.
right? Its place in the world.
Yeah.
It's even though, I've changed a lot since I was a kid, I'm still me because, I'm part of this continuous story.
Exactly. And this applies to so much more than just ships and people. Think about companies. They go through mergers, they rebrand. Personnel changes all the time.
Right.
But their identity persists as long as they're functioning within that larger economic system.
Wow, this is really making me think about identity in a whole new way. EvCult is full of these aha moments. Okay, so what other paradox can we, throw at this framework?
Let's jump into the world of logic and language with the liar paradox, a real brain twister.
Oh, yeah. Remember that from philosophy class. It's the one where the statement contradicts itself, right?
Exactly.
Something like, this statement is false.
That's the one. If the statement is true, then it must be false because that's what it claims. But if it's false, then it must be true. It's a total logical loop.
Yeah, it makes my head spin just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So how does EvCult help us, untangle this knot?
Remember how we were talking about truth being relative to different levels within EvCult?
Right.
It's not about some, absolute truth, but how statements function within specific levels of that Hohenparten hierarchy.
So the liar paradox is tripping us up because it's trying to refer to itself within the same level, creating kind of short circuit.
Exactly, like a snake trying to swallow its own tail. EvCult says each piece of information, it has its own level, and it can't contradict itself within that same level. It has to integrate upward to find, a resolution.
So it's not that the statement is meaningless,
Yeah.
but it's breaking the rules of the system by trying to be self-referential in this tricky way.
Precisely. Trying to fit a square peg into a round hole? EvCult helps us see that the paradox comes from misunderstanding how information is structured within systems.
This is making me realize how much our thinking is shaped by hidden assumptions.
Yeah.
We need these new frameworks like EvCult to break out of those mental boxes.
That's a great point. Speaking of assumptions, let's look at another paradox that highlights how our perspective shapes what we see. Hempel's paradox, also known as the Raven paradox.
Okay, color me intrigued. What's paradoxical about ravens?
Well, let's say your hypothesis is all ravens are black.
Okay.
To test it, you observe ravens, and yep, they're all black. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
So far, so good. What's the catch?
Here's the twist. Logically, all ravens are black is the same as saying all non-black things are non-ravens.
Wait, what? How are those two statements the same?
Think about it. If something is not black and it's also not a raven, it technically supports the idea that all ravens are black. So observing, let's say, a green apple, which is both non-black and non-raven, actually seems to confirm your hypothesis about ravens.
Okay, now my brain is doing backflips. How does seeing a green apple tell us anything about ravens?
It's a mind bender, for sure. But EVCult helps us see why this paradox comes up. Remember how we talked about evidence being scale-dependent within the Holland-Parton framework?
Right, the idea that information has different levels of, like, relevance depending on the system we're looking at.
Exactly. So seeing that green apple might be technically true within its own, like, tiny system,
Okay.
but it's not telling us anything meaningful, really, about the bigger picture of ravens and their color.
So it's like zooming in on a single pixel and mistaking it for the whole picture.
A perfect analogy. Hempel's paradox shows how we need to consider the context and the scale of information, and EVCult provides the framework to do just that.
This is making me think about all the information we're bombarded with every day.
Yeah.
You know, just because something seems to support an idea doesn't mean it's actually, like, relevant or meaningful in the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And that's a key takeaway from exploring these paradoxes through EVCult. It encourages us to question our assumptions and to think critically about information within a system.
Okay, we've gone from tiny cats in boxes to the vastness of space and even the logic of language. My mind is, like, officially stretched to its limits. Can we maybe take a little pause here, come back for a final round of, paradox busting?
Absolutely. Let's take a break and we'll pick up our exploration of EVCult and its power to unravel those mind-bending paradoxes in part 3.
Okay, I'm back and ready for more. Hit me with another paradox.
All right, we've looked at paradoxes dealing with tiny particles, vast galaxies, right?
Yeah.
How about we travel back in time now, back to ancient Greece for this one?
The history lesson and a paradox. I'm game. Who are we talking about?
Zeno of Elea.
Zeno of Elea.
And his famous paradoxes of motion, they're these, like, thought experiments that try to prove that movement is an illusion.
Hold on, an illusion? I'm pretty sure I walked here today, so how can movement not be real?
Yeah, it sounds pretty wild, I know. But Zeno's logic is actually surprisingly compelling. One of his most famous ones is called Achilles and the Tortoise.
Okay, I'm picturing a race between, like, the fastest warrior in Greece and a slow, plodding tortoise. I'm already sensing a twist here.
You got it. So the tortoise, he gets a head start. And Zeno's argument is that Achilles can never actually overtake it. Because to catch up, Achilles first has to reach the point where the tortoise, started.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But by the time Achilles gets there, the tortoise has moved a bit further ahead.
Right.
So Achilles has to reach that new point. But the tortoise has moved again. And this goes on infinitely.
Ah, I see. It creates this infinite loop where Achilles is always closing the distance but never actually catching up. But that still feels wrong, right? We know things move.
Right. That's what's so interesting about these paradoxes. They kind of highlight the potential gaps in our understanding of space, time, motion. And this is where EVCult comes in with a fresh perspective.
Okay, lay it on me. How does EVCult solve this clash between logic and our, like, everyday experience?
So remember how we were talking about everything being organized into those discrete levels? Yeah.
Within the Holland-Parton hierarchy, like the Russian nesting dolls.
Right. Each one complete, but also part of a larger whole.
Exactly. Well, EVCult applies that same logic to space and time. So instead of seeing motion as this smooth, continuous flow, it sees it as a series of jumps between those distinct levels.
So it's kind of like a film reel. We perceive the motion as continuous, but it's really just a bunch of still frames played quickly.
Exactly. A perfect analogy. And just like those film frames, EVCult suggests there are, like, fundamental limits to how finely we can divide space and time.
So Zeno's paradoxes are working with this assumption of, like, infinite divisibility, while EVCult is saying, nope, there's these ultimate building blocks, these pixels of reality.
Right. EVCult provides a framework that kind of reconciles the seemingly paradoxical nature of motion by recognizing the limits of divisibility. It's a reminder that our perception of reality is shaped by these assumptions that we often don't even realize we're making. It's so true. We need these new models, like EVCult, to help us see beyond those limitations. Okay, so what other perceptual paradox can we throw at EVCult?
Let's shift our focus to one that's central to quantum mechanics, the observer effect.
Ah, yes. The idea that the act of observing something can actually change it. Spooky.
It definitely has that, like, mind-bending quality to it. It's most famously seen in experiments where, Like measuring a particle seems to influence its behavior.
It's like the universe is saying, like, hey, no peeking. The moment we try to pin something down, it slips away.
Right. And that's where Evcolt provides a really interesting explanation. Remember the first law of Holland-Parton's?
No.
Upward integration?
Yeah, where smaller systems combine to create those larger ones.
Exactly. So Evcolt would say that observation itself is an active integration.
Okay.
So the observer and the observed, they become part of a larger interconnected system.
So it's not that the act of observation is like magically changing the thing itself, but rather that the interaction between the observer and the observed creates a new system with new properties.
Precisely. It's like two streams merging to form a river. The individual streams, they still exist, but now you have this new entity with its own unique characteristics.
That makes a lot of sense. So the observer effect isn't some mysterious fourth. It's simply a consequence of systems interacting.
Yeah.
And integrating. Evcolt demystifies it, showing how it fits into this, this larger framework of how reality works.
Yeah, exactly. It shows how observation is an active participation in the creation of reality, not just passive watching.
We're not just spectators. We're part of the game. Okay, this has been an amazing journey through all sorts of paradoxes, but got to wrap up soon. What's our final stop on this paradox-solving adventure?
Let's end with a paradox that lies at the heart of Evcolt itself. The problem of universals.
The problem of universals. Sounds very philosophical. Break it down for me.
So universals are like abstract concepts or qualities that seem to exist independently of specific things. Redness, beauty, justice, these are all universals.
So they're like blueprints for things in the world. Like redness is the blueprint for all red objects.
That's a good way to visualize it. But the problem is, where do these universals actually exist? Are they separate, eternal entities, floating out there? Or do they only exist, like, in specific things?
So it's a question about the nature of reality itself. Are these abstract concepts fundamental building blocks, or are they just products of our minds?
Exactly. And this is where Evcolt offers a unique solution. Remember how Evcolt says everything is organized within that Holland-Parton hierarchy?
Yes, it's been the common thread through all of these paradoxes. So how does this hierarchy solve, like, the problem of universals?
Evcolt says universals aren't separate eternal things. They're emergent properties that arise from the integration of lower-level Holland-Partons. They're patterns that emerge from the interactions of specific things in the world.
So redness isn't some abstract concept, floating in the void. It's a quality that emerges from, like, the way light interacts with certain objects.
Exactly. And beauty might emerge from, specific arrangements of elements in a painting, or justice from the interactions within a legal system.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Evcolt is saying that even our most abstract concepts are ultimately grounded in the concrete interactions of things in the world. It bridges this gap between the abstract and the concrete.
That's it. It's a perspective that gives us a new way to understand not only these mind-bending paradoxes, but also the very nature of knowledge itself.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored so many paradoxes from the ancient to the modern, from the cosmic to the personal. And Evcolt has given us this, like, amazing framework to make sense of it all. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for thinking about the world.
It's been a pleasure sharing these ideas with you. Evcolt is truly a revolutionary way of thinking, and hopefully our deep dive has inspired you to explore it further.
Absolutely. I'm seeing connections and patterns I never noticed before. And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity too. If Evcolt is right, and everything can be seen as part of this fractal Holland-Parton system, how does that change how you see the world around you, your own life? That's something to ponder as you continue your own deep dives into the mysteries of the universe.